Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Senate Education Committee. It's a little bit past 9, so I think we'll get started. Our first bill is Senate Bill 237, and I'll have Senator Sherman come up and tell us about it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I am Senator Tom Sherman, District 24, 11 towns on the Seacoast. And I am introducing Senate Bill 237 FN relative to participation in the Education Freedom Account Program. Whether it's the Education Freedom Account Program or the scholarship program that was introduced in 2011, the stated purpose was to level the playing field and allow people of low income to access our private schools if they so chose. The concern I had about the education freedom accounts was that a family could access that if they were 300% of FPL, federal poverty level, before in the first year they applied. But they didn't need to reassess ever again. So imagine a kindergartner accessing the program. Parents are able to access the program because they're under 300% of FPL. And in the next 10 to 11 years, they see growth in their income, they both have jobs, and yet they are never asked again whether they're eligible for the program. They could be making $500,000 a year, and they would still be able to access taxpayer dollars through the Education Freedom Account. Let's take a look at SNAP programs. Let's take a look at Medicaid. Let's take a look at every other taxpayer-funded program in the state. Nowhere else in the state of New Hampshire or in the federal programming is there that kind of hands-off approach to taxpayer dollars. This is a huge concern, and I'm looking at 5 people who are really known for their fiscal conservatism, their accountability for taxpayer dollars. And the Senate is a place where we are always concerned about this. In fact, having sat in the legislature for 10 years, well, actually 8 with a 2-year break, I've always been noticing how with SNAP and Medicaid programs, there's always a concern about fraud. In fact, in the therapeutic cannabis program, we have concerns about fraud. Here, there's no concern about fraud. In fact, you can come in as a first-year parent, and it's like, trust me, for the next 12 years. There are some fairly loose compared to all of the other entitlements that we see, federal and state entitlements. There are some loose bounds, if you read the statute, for what can happen. But they're so loose that there's not even an ability of the state to take them to court or to do anything like that if they are found to be lying about their income. And in fact, they don't even have to lie. They don't have to prove that they still meet eligibility anytime after the first year. So imagine that kindergartner, the parents come in, or say they've got 3 kids. They're drawing $5,000 a year per child. Just for demonstration purposes, let's say they're triplets coming into the kindergarten program. Then they've got 12 years at $15,000 a year of taxpayer dollars with 0 fiscal accountability. My bill fixes that. My bill says that if the program is truly about leveling the playing field let's make sure that people are accountable to taxpayer dollars. To the taxpayers. Let's make sure we do our fiscal responsibility and that they will always be eligible. Remember, 15 times 12 is a lot of taxpayer dollars with no accountability. I'm not repealing, with this bill, I'm not repealing the program. I'm just saying, let's make sure that we are protecting taxpayers, protecting our property taxes. Property taxes. I'm going to say it one more time. Property taxes. Let's make sure we're protecting those as this program moves forward. Let's make sure we're not being hypocritical about the true purpose of this program. And let's make sure that we put in the accountability and the fiscal responsibility that this program needs as it moves forward. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Senator Sherman. Any questions from the committee members? Senator Hennessy.
Thank you. Good to see you, Senator Sherman.
Likewise.
You mentioned property taxes. So right now, the funding of this program, how much of local property taxes go to fund the EFAs?
That depends. It's coming from the Education Trust Fund, so some of it does.
No, some of it doesn't. All property taxes
I'm
raised by
not-
towns and cities in New Hampshire stay locally. We have no funder towns, we have no donor towns, so nothing comes to the state to be distributed elsewhere.
I didn't come here to argue with you,
Okay.
Senator, but I will say I disagree with you.
Okay?
Any other questions? Senator Khan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You used the word hypocritical. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but this is hypocritical because this was a boundary that was set up in the original bill to income qualify, but because we aren't really income qualifying, it's broadening the pool beyond 300% of the poverty level, that it seems hypocritical to just qualify people beyond the 300% of poverty level.
On Health and Human Services, we have a lot of the oversight of our other entitlements. This is an entitlement. This is using taxpayer dollars to help people who don't have enough money to afford or to have access to programming. So we give them access to that money so that they can have access to programming. This is under the rubric of being for low-income folks. If it's under the rubric for being for low-income folks, and we hold other low-income folks, when they access food stamps or when they access Medicaid, not only to super tight restrictions, but in the state of New Hampshire, we tried to invoke a work requirement. At least 3 of the people here voted for their work requirement. There's nothing like that in this entitlement. So rather than getting that restrictive, which I think would be fiscally responsible, and have real-time monitoring of the incomes of the parents who are trying to access this, I'm picking something that, in this bill, that is much more relaxed than any other entitlement we do in the state or federal government. And that's just to do an annual means test. And then put a little bit of teeth into it if they're lying. Where is the concern about fraud in this program? There doesn't appear to be any. In fact, this is, for a family, they could, if they wanted to commit fraud, it's easy in this program to get very large amounts of taxpayer dollars coming directly to you. I'm not saying most of the parents are like that. I suspect they're not. I suspect they really want to participate in this program. But every time for the last 10 years that I've been overseeing Medicaid and SNAP, almost every discussion talks about fraud. Why is there no discussion about that here? That's what's hypocritical.
Thank you, Senator.
Done. Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Senator Ward, and thank you, Senator Sherman, for bringing 237 in front of us today. Just a comment, not a question. I mean, in all my work, and I think in all our work, transparency and accountability is, is very, in government, is important. Yesterday, I was listening in to a House hearing in House Health and Human Services about the Medicaid postpartum, a bill that would expand Medicaid postpartum benefits for a group of women that aren't eligible because of their income. And the second part of the of the questioning from the committee was all about re-verification, like making sure it really, it wasn't as much on the healthcare side in terms of why we needed this, but it followed up on that accountability piece, like how are we sure as we're going through this process that these women are eligible and continuously eligible. So I just wanted to bring that up, that it may, it's another chamber, but a similar conversation. And if we're doing this and focusing in on one part of our work, then it only makes sense to me that it comes before here in the EFAs. Thank you.
Yeah, and that is the point.
Yeah.
That is the point. If we are going to use taxpayer dollars, whether it's for health care, whether it's for pregnant women, whether it's for postpartum care, whether it's for food stamps, we always have been vigilant about how those taxpayers are used, and that the people who are using them actually meet the requirements. This is the only program I've ever seen where we're not. And I'm not asking for the same level of vigilance, the same level of accountability, the same level of fiscal responsibility that we demand off of every other entitlement. I'm just doing a once-a-year check to make sure the parents and the kids still meet the requirements. That's not too much to ask, is it?
Senator Ricciardi, you had a question?
Yes. Good morning,
Turn on your mic.
Thanks. Good morning, Senator Sherman. Thank you for bringing your concern forward. Before I try to address it, I just would like to make a couple of comments, if I may. I think everybody in this room, absolutely, myself included, loves our public schools, and I, for one, want to see them thrive and be the best they can possibly be. This program, the Education Freedom Accounts, helps people, parents, children that need help. It's about giving opportunities so that every child can thrive. Not every child learns the same way. It can't just be the brick and mortar of a building. It has to be about the children, the parents, the teachers. Most people want to stay in their public schools if they can, but there are circumstances that don't always allow for it. So beyond the income cap, which is important, we also have in this Education Freedom Account protection for the public schools by the phase-out grants. So the schools will be receiving 100% of funding the first year for every child who decides to use the EFA accounts. We also have an oversight committee. The committee is going to be looking into any impacts, negative or positive, for the schools. So I think that's important. And then it's been said, as you're saying, that EFAs lack oversight and accountability, but EFAs provide greater accountability and oversight of education funding. I'd just like to read this. The experience in where the Education Freedom Counts have been operating more than it has in New Hampshire, they have shown that parents are more responsible than government-run programs, and misuse has been virtually eliminated through an online system that New Hampshire EFA program would provide. The New Hampshire Department of Education oversees the scholarship organization that administers EFAs. The scholarship organization is required by law to publish annual audits. The scholarship organization is required by law to report cases of suspected fraud to the DOE and the Attorney General's office. The scholarship organization is empowered to contract with a third-party vendor to administer the payment system. This makes fraud virtually impossible by allowing parents to choose from a comprehensive list of approved educational products and services. New Hampshire EFA program is using a similar online portal, right down to the pencil.
I don't think that was a question, but thank you for the comments. But I will answer it. And I'll say, if you feel like this is a way to decrease fraud, let's apply this same standard to SNAP, Medicaid, food stamps, and every other form, because it really doesn't require much government involvement. There's not a whole lot of oversight. There's not a whole lot of hands-on. You've outsourced a lot of the information gathering. So let's do the same thing with our other programming. If you feel that comfortable that this is adequate, let's do the same for SNAP. Let's step away, let's stop using fraud word, and let's say the people who are accessing nutritional support, probably some of the same kids that are in this program, we don't have to monitor the parents' incomes. That's all this bill does. It's not threatening, it's not a repeal, it's not threatening the program. It's just a minimal annual ask of, do you still qualify? And if you feel like this program is adequate to prevent fraud, then I would ask you to join me in implementing this same level of oversight for Medicaid and for SNAP. I don't think the federal government would let us do that, but I also think you'd probably object. This is not about the folks who are accessing this. It's not. It's not saying there are any bad people out there. It's just saying, let's do at least some annual level of means assessment for the children who are participating and make sure they still meet the goals of the program. That's it.
Well, I agree with, Madam Chair. Follow-up.
Short follow-up, please.
I agree with accountability in everything and consequences. I'm not disputing this bill. I'm just trying to bring everything to light. That's what testimony and discussion is about. And I think you'll hear more about the accountability so that proper decisions can be made. But one of the points I was making is we do have a committee, and all of these things will be addressed. It's a brand-new program to New Hampshire. So that's all I'm saying, is that everything in this committee will be addressed, including your concern. Thank you.
If I could answer that, there is nothing in the bill that says the committee needs to address annual means assessment or that the committee has the power to ask for an annual means assessment. Nothing. They don't have that power. I have the statute right here. So, and I don't think this is the proper forum for us to do a back and forth. I'm happy to talk with you offline. But all this is doing is it is minimally setting the bar towards the level of every other entitlement we do in the state. And I'm asking you to be consistent. Why is this program different? Why is this program special in a way that we don't have to be as accountable for taxpayer dollars as we are in every other program in the state? We don't do this in any other program. We don't give people 12 years of taxpayer dollars with a means assessment only at the beginning.
Any other questions from the committee? Senator Khan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I think your point here is this may not necessarily be fraud because in this instance, the legislature and the legislation has let the safeguards down. The safeguards that exist for all other programs are as you've described, qualifying on an annual basis minimally. And this program, those safeguards that exist aren't in place. What you're proposing here is to put those safeguards into law that don't currently exist. Is that right?
Yeah, so the original stated goal of this was to level the playing field so that if people, lower income people, and it's 300% of FPL or below, that they should have equal or at least some help in accessing private school, religious school, or homeschooling assistance. Then let's do it. It's not in the original statute. It's not in the statute. You know it's not. All of us know it's not. So let's do what we said we were going to do when this bill was passed in the budget. Let's hold people minimally accountable. And if anybody can find a place where we give away on an annual basis $5,000 to $8,000 a year to taxpayers of taxpayer dollars with no means testing in a program that's supposed to be addressing lower income folks, I'd love to see it. But I don't know of any program.
All set? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator Sherman. Kate Baker?
Hi, thanks so much for having me today. I'm Kate Baker. I'm the Executive Director of Children's Scholarship Fund, and I came today to tell you a story about income limits. The story is about a young man named Gabe who was in a public school. He has autism, and he was having violent outbursts, this young man. He lives with his grandparents because of the opioid crisis, so his grandparents have guardianship of him. These violent episodes were causing his grandmother and, of course, their family much distress. They were concerned that he would either hurt someone else in the school or hurt himself, or someone would hurt him. So they withdrew him from the public school. They got a scholarship from us, and they moved him to Montessori near him, which is great for him because it's all hands-on, which works wonderful for him because he has autism. He stayed at this Montessori school for 3 years. By the end of his time at the Montessori school, he was doing so well. He had adjusted, he was not violent anymore, he was making friends. As a matter of fact, he made a video for his karate studio. He was like, "Hi, my name's Gabe, you should come to my karate studio. We learn a lot here." He was totally adjusted, not having violent episodes. Total success. At that point, his grandparents on their small, modest house had a roof leak. The roof was going to cost $10,000 to repair. His grandfather was a semi-retired tradesman. So he went out and he did work to get money to fix the roof. He got $10,000. He fixed the roof. He used the $10,000 to fix the roof. They reapplied for the scholarship the next year, and they were over the income limits. Now, I can tell you that I was not going to throw Gabe out of the program. I went out, I found money from donors. I said, please, just give, I can't give him tax credit money, right, because they're over the income limits. I had to raise the money, the $5,000 for Gabe's scholarship to keep him at the school, which I did do. But that example is the reason why when you put income limits on a program, you're definitely saying to a family, don't go work and make more money if your roof leaks. Don't take that pay increase at your job, and or your child has to get out of the program. So you may have thought when you were crossing out lines in the education freedom account law that you were just crossing off words or just crossing off sentences. But in fact, when you cross out words and lines in the education freedom account law, you are in fact crossing out real children and real children in need. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. So it is in our contract, our state contract, that the families do reapply annually, and so they submit their financial information every year, regardless of, yes, we don't have to throw out a child in this program who goes perhaps a couple of dollars over the income limit, but we do collect that information. We do have to re-qualify the families for the free and reduced lunch differentiated aid every year. And so the application process for a family from a financial standpoint looks the same every year. They do reapply and give us that financial information. We just don't have to throw them out if they go over. So we're doing the same due diligence, human eyes on every piece of financial information every year.
Any other questions? Senator Khan. Oh, I'm sorry,
Thank-
follow up for Senator Hennessy first.
Thank you.
And then Senator Khan.
So just based on prior testimony we've heard, how would you detect any fraud that if somebody was submitting false information or trying to game the system?
Yeah, so we do have 4 employees at Children's Scholarship Fund who that is their entire job to look at the financial documentation. So there's a benefit to being part of Children's Scholarship Fund National. The teammates that look at the financial applications of the families have been doing this for about 25 years. And so they collect all of that documentation. There are ways that you could see. So for example, if somebody takes their tax return form and is trying to do something that's fraudulent on it, you can see where someone might have used whiteout, for example, because when they scan it, you'll see a little line above the numbers. And so the teammates at Children's Scholarship Fund actually do lay human eyes on every piece of documentation and are specifically looking for things like that.
All set. Senator Khan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Kate. So a couple of questions. We know that there's a 10% overhead draw on each account.
Sure, that's gold standard for nonprofits and usually required in federal grants so that you don't run so thin or so narrow that you don't have the resources to run a federal grant or program well. So yeah, it runs 90-10, 90% of the dollars right to kids and 10% for administrative costs. Yep.
And you're collecting the income data every year,
Yes.
right? So there really is no additional cost to what Senator Sherman has suggested.
There wouldn't be. No, that's our standard procedure, is to look at every document with human eyes on every application. It's an incredible amount of work, but that's what we do.
And so I just wanted to get straight that, because I was a little concerned that if there was this additional step, but it doesn't seem like there's an additional step that has additional costs. It has additional consequences because it would put some safeguards in that don't exist today, but
Again, my biggest
there's
concern is just
no
throwing out the
additional cost.
children, right? My biggest concern would be that if you remove that line from the law, in essence, you're removing children from the program who might have some sort of extenuating circumstance like their family. I mean, if you want to write in the law that if someone wins the lottery, they have to get kicked out, you probably wouldn't get an argument from me. But if we're talking about a family who might be $1 or $2 over, I mean, the entire reason I think that the legislature passed this program was really to stabilize education, right? Remember, we were in the middle of COVID where some of the schools were closed and families needed a school that was open because they needed to go to work, or there was a medically fragile child who needed to stay home. I mean, I think the point was to stabilize education, and so that's why this doing the financial qualification and allowing a child to stay in made good sense to me anyway.
Yeah, if I could.
Follow up?
I mean, you're familiar with other scholarship programs. I am too. Some of the cliff effects that there are to financial aid programs are, what you described. You're either in or you're out. But there's also income smoothing programs that phase it out from a level down to another floor that could address Senator Sherman's concern, could address your concern simultaneously, and still put some safeguards into this that don't currently exist.
Well, this kind of already works like that, if you think about it, because when you're qualifying for the base aid, that's not an income-driven right? Once you qualify for the program at 300%, your base aid is what it is. You get more, right? If you're a free and reduced lunch family, you get that free and reduced lunch differentiated aid, and if your income went up, that would go away. And so in essence, it already does do that.
Not quite the way, though, that Senator Sherman's
Right,
proposing.
but Senator Sherman and I mean, are both sponsors of the repeal bill also and this bill, so I can't help but feel like, I don't know, you know what I mean, negotiating wise, right?
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Now, Megan Tuttle is here. She supports the bill. She does not want to speak. Roseanne Chester?
Thank you, Committee Chair. Thank you, committee members, for allowing me to speak today. I want to, I oppose this. I think that this honestly speaks to more discrimination for people in our state. The bottom line is everybody within a certain income range wants what's best for their children. That's the bottom line. And in this situation, most of the time, the people that are accessing these funds are people that have tried relentlessly, sometimes for years, to get the needs met in the public school system without success. If you've ever had a child or known a child that has significant issues in the public school setting, and they've had to go through the process of getting them coded, getting them the things they need. Now with COVID-19, it's made things so much more difficult for these parents. Think about a single parent with 4 kids, all in school, all special needs. That parent, single working parent with 4 kids, chances are she's within this income range. She is now attending IEP meetings for 4 kids, sometimes fighting. If she has to appeal a process, it can take a long time. Try to multiply that times 4. Now you're asking a parent for another level. Let's liken this to back in the day when I was 16 years old, I wanted my first car. If I had gone to the big banks, I would have been denied based on income, even with a cosigner. I went to my local little mom and pop bank where I had my little savings account that you used to be able to put in at school, and they took a look at me as an individual. That's what this program does. Taking things away from that program, putting it in the hands of putting in another level of bureaucracy is not fair or appropriate for the parents or the children that this program allegedly services, or this program does service now. Just want to end with a very short story. I was listening into a House bill, and during that House bill, there was a mom of an 8-year-old child with Tourette's. She has been fighting for a year and a half, trying to get his needs met. She's nowhere near where he needs to be. He is now at home. He has not been able to leave his home for a year and a half because his Tourette's is causing, it's displayed through tics. So having to wear a mask in the special ed program does not allow him to go to school. She's not going to abuse her child in that way. She is still fighting to get through the special ed process so that she can even be eligible for this. That's a year and a half that this 8-year-old child has been suffering because of the restrictions that we already put on our state parents. So it's time to say, you know what? Look at the other side of things. Stop looking at, because to be honest with you, no parent that's using this program is fraudulently using this program. I feel very comfortable saying that. That's it, and I'll take any questions.
Any questions from the committee members? I see none. Thank you very much. Do we have anybody in the audience who did not sign up and wants to speak?
Madam Chair, it was recently indicated to me, I believe folks are now entering the room to sign in to testify, and I believe that process is underway for this bill.
Are they signing up? No? Okay. Is it on 237?
I believe so. They're looking at the sign-in sheets now, so once we get the crowd under control, I think I can go over and take a look.
Kate Baker? Yes. Are they signing up for 237 or for the next one? Okay. There's 237. Okay, we have somebody here who wants to speak. Shalimar, come to the table, please.
What's the name, Senator?
Shalimar?
Shalimar?
Yep. Opposes the bill and like to speak.
I think she signed up for the wrong bill. She wants to speak on 432. Senator, are you still on 237? Yes. Who's your next one, 237?
So Shalimar wants to speak on 237.
No, she's the next one. She signed up.
The next bill, okay. I don't see anybody else in the audience who wants to speak on 237. Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Chairwoman Ward. Can I call Kate Baker back up? I have a question for her. Is that possible? I'd like Kate to
Kate
come
Baker,
back.
are you willing to come back up?
Are you willing?
Senator Prentice has a question for you.
There's like 40 kids in the hall there, so I don't know. Can we put them around
No.
around this edge?
No. Cannot stand in the room.
You're-
Senator
set?
Prentice, you had a question for,
Thank you, Chair Ward. I'm trying to make sure I get
all
this
right.
properly. And thank you, Kate, for coming back up. So I just wanted to ask you, one thing, and, well, maybe two, but one, you said that the EFA's legislation was passed to level the playing field because of COVID.
I think that was a large part of what the mindset was for the legislature, although I don't really know why they did it necessarily. I mean, I think it's important for all kids to have the education that's the right fit for them, clearly. And so I would have encouraged them to do it regardless of COVID or not. But I think that definitely did kind of draw back the curtain so that they were able to see the need in the community from families, particularly of essential workers who needed some assistance at the time, for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so thank you for answering my question. I might be new to the legislature, but not new to the conversation as a local elected official. So this has been an ongoing effort related to, to bring a voucher program into New Hampshire. So although COVID may have peeled back some layers, I don't think it was the major impetus. I think that it was, so I just wanted, that's my assessment on it. So I wanted to put that out there.
Sure,
Thank
the
you.
legislature, passes things that they think are appropriate at the time that they pass them, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then as you were departing at the end of your testimony, you made a comment that if you're supporting this, you're also supporting the repeal.
I know, my comment was
I just
that
want to be clear on that
that
because,
Senator Sherman said he wasn't repealing the bill in this legislation, but he is the co-sponsor of the repeal bill also.
okay,
That was what I said.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
may I?
One more question, yes.
Okay, so what I just want to offer, or what I want to say, is that I don't think, the two are unrelated, and asking for transparency in one, in my opinion, in one bill does not automatically, I mean, I understand that he's a co-sponsor, and so am I on both of these, but I support transparency, and yes, I do support a repeal for my own reasons, and I'm willing to talk about that, but I don't want to commingle those in the conversation when we're looking at one bill versus another, and so my concern is that your statement, I want, for the public, I want to make sure that we clear these two apart.
Right, and for me, again, I see it as, having us throw kids out of the program, and so a repeal bill throws kids out of the program, and so does, creating a place where if someone goes $1 over, they have to be out. And so that's definitely where I'm coming at it from. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All set?
Yep, thank you.
Yes.
I would like to speak. I did not sign up because I wasn't going to, but I would like to.
Okay, come up to the table and state your name, and try to keep it to 3 minutes at this
I'll
point.
keep it very short. My name is Representative Alicia Lekis. I represent Hillsborough 37, Hudson, and Pelham. And when we worked on this bill, one of the reasons that we only had the cutoff the first year was because we did not want to take a kid out of a program that was working for them. And the same thing, if you had a family in the program and it was working, we didn't want to at some point say, oh, well, now they're making more money, which hopefully most people do as time goes on. And now these kids have to be uprooted and put, sent someplace else, because just because you make more money doesn't mean you can afford a private school, doesn't mean you can afford the homeschooling. So there's this space in between, which is mostly the middle class, who can't really afford, the private school, but they're not poor enough to get help. And so we didn't want those kids who found a place that's found an education that's working, we didn't want to them have to take them back out of that and send them back to public school, which does cost more than the $5,000 anyways, but that was the intent when we wrote the bill. I just thought I'd clarify.
Senator Prentice?
Thank you, Chair Ward, and thank you. It's
Representative Lekis.
okay. Thank you very much for taking my question. So I understand what you're saying, but I want to go back to Senator Sherman's argument, and I also want to go back to the conversation that I heard at a House hearing yesterday. If there is a standard or a line set for eligibility, and that you no longer meet that eligibility, if we're going to say to mothers or people who are accessing healthcare, say through a program which is, Medicaid is the one I'm going to talk about specifically, that has state and federal taxpayer dollars in it, they may lose their coverage. But this, what I'm concerned about is that this is asking for something different. All this does is bring transparency to the process and hold the standard across the board. I'm not interested in the phrase has been used, throwing children out. That's not what I'm getting at. All I want is to bring, full transparency through to this. And that's, I think, what Senator Sherman, well, that's what I heard Senator Sherman talk about. So I appreciate what you have to say. I just wanted to shine the light on all of these, not just treat one program different than the other when there are taxpayer dollars involved. That's all.
Can I respond to that?
Are you all set?
I just wanted to say that education, every kid gets an education, and so it's not like every person the state or the community pays for health care, but every kid gets paid for by tax dollars and education, and that's the difference that I see between Medicaid or Medicaid and an education. They're very different topics. And the one is always paid for by tax dollars, and the other one is only paid for poor people. So that's, at any rate, I don't know if that clarifies, but I'm done.
Medicaid for poor people.
All set? I don't want to get into big discussion.
Yeah, I don't want to,
We can
It's
talk
part of the
afterwards.
debate, so I'm gonna-
transparency is, and holding the standard across the board is mine, but thank you for coming forward and taking my question.
Thank you, Representative Lakers. Is anybody else who has something to say on Senate Bill 237? That will close the hearing on 237. Now we move on to 432. And for this bill, we have quite a few people who like to testify, and I'm going to have to ask each of you to either have a written testimony that you can give to our legislative aid or give a quick summary and try to keep it to 3 minutes. Otherwise, we'll be here all day, and we can't. So, Senator Khan will present the bill.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Senate Education Committee, my colleagues, and others who are present to hear Senate Bill 432, which is a repeal of the education freedom accounts. We've all received a lot of email on this bill in favor and opposed. What I find interesting in this is the parallels between the findings of parents who are supporting education freedom accounts, opposing this bill, and the findings from the Commission to Study School Funding. The points being made in both are strikingly familiar and similar. Students from low-income families are stating that the lack of educational enrichment, students from lower-income families lack educational enrichments. That's what I take away from the letters, the emails. They lack the educational enrichments that students in higher income families can access. So what are those enrichments? Things like computer technologies, private music lessons, books and learning materials, travel to museums and other distant places. The place of education matters little for access to enrichment activities. A student from a lower income family likely needs greater access to educational resources, whether they're a public school student, a homeschooled student, or a private school student. Public schools with lower performance are most likely lacking the resources for student enrichment activities and are challenged by higher class size. An extra $4,000 to $6,000 per student would certainly help students in communities with lower income households gain access to opportunities wealthier districts are able to provide their students. Just ask Manchester, or Pittsfield, or Charlestown, or Newport, just to name a few districts where this is true. But this legislature doesn't want to address inequity in opportunity for public school students, only for students who leave public schools. That's a perverse incentive, isn't it? One of the deceptions in New Hampshire's school voucher program is we'll never know if a homeschooled or private schooled student is achieving any better than the public school student because we aren't assessing educational outcomes for private school students. I don't disdain helping students struggling in public schools. I do have a disdain for our failure to recognize public schools' funding needs to support students who are falling behind and need additional opportunities. The only place where one size fits all applies is in the state's funding of public schools, not in the schools themselves. The case for repealing educational freedom accounts funding comes from the priority to protect property taxes from going up to fund them. Follow the money. Sounds like a movie. Follow the money. The most recent Education Trust Fund balance projection from the Legislative Budget Office is that there'll be a fund balance at the end of fiscal 22 of $40 million, and at the end of fiscal 23 of $11.6 million. These estimates are down by $14 million in 22 and $10 million in 23 from what we budgeted. Most of this difference is explained by education freedom accounts supporting students that were already in private and homeschooling last year. The $11.6 million in the Education Trust Fund balance projection for the end of fiscal 23 is relying on this year's Education Freedom Account expenses, which are bound to go up from the $8 million this year. Education freedom accounts were estimated to cost in the first year $129,000. However, now the Department of Education expects this cost to be $8.1 million for this year. For now, as a placeholder until there's a revision from the Commissioner of Education, the Legislative Budget Office assumes that education freedom accounts will cost the state the same amount as this year in fiscal 23. That's not likely. More realistically, they're likely to double for next year, which would be approximately $13 million more than what was originally budgeted for the biennium. State general revenues over this biennium, they're doing very well, but not the education trust funds specifically. So while the general revenue funds are up by a significant amount, over $100 million over plan for the first 6 months of the year, the education trust funds are running very close to plan because we cut business enterprise taxes, which are a significant portion of the education trust fund. We cut those for this biennium. The Education Trust Fund at the end of fiscal 23, before accounting for any increases in education freedom account spending, would be whittled down to $11.6 million. And we don't have that budget estimate for fiscal 23. But if it is reasonable to expect that the spending estimated at $8 million this year is likely to be $16 million in fiscal 23, this rounding error of $13 million would put the Education Trust Fund very close to zero at the end of this biennium. At the same time, we've got information from the Department of Education verifying that public education funding decreases in each year in this biennial budget from fiscal 21 levels. The total loss this biennium is $82 million. $24 million in fiscal 22 and $58 million in fiscal 23. Long and short, this biennium, the state cut $82 million out of funding for public schools and is putting $24 million into private schools and homeschooling and zeroing out the Education Trust Fund before the next biennium. That's not prudent financial management. The public can conclude, while vouchers are benefiting a small number of families in total, this new student voucher program represents a diversion of state resources away from the majority of our students and a downshifting of public school costs to local property taxes. We can all agree that every child deserves access to an adequate education. But this isn't the way to do it. providing an incentive to leave public school to serve 204 students or even 2,000 students when we have 40,000 low-income, free and reduced price lunch students attending all of our public schools in New Hampshire, that we underfund year after year and should equalize their opportunities as well. And that should be our goal, is to equalize the opportunities for all students in our state, and we're not achieving that. That's why I brought forth the bill to repeal the education freedom accounts, and I'm prepared to answer any questions from the committee.
Questions from the committee members? Senator Shardy?
Good morning, Senator Khan. Thank you for your testimony. I do want to address the property tax issue. I am the queen champion of fighting for property tax relief. I think everyone is aware of that. School choice is not going to increase property taxes. Under the Education Freedom Account program, the state portion of education funding is an average of $4,600. It would follow the child. If the parent chooses to move their child, the money that the local school districts raise would remain in the school. That means the district school is left with more per pupil funding, not less. In addition to that, the amendment that was added to the phase-in program helps the schools to adjust, and this will not increase property taxes. It's been studied. It may even reduce them over time. So I wanted to just clarify that. Thank you.
If I might, Madam Chair, could I respond?
Pardon?
Can I respond to the comment?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I want to reiterate, we have cut public school funding by $82 million in this biennium from the levels that were established in fiscal 21. We have that evidence. At the same time, we found $24 million, or need to find $24 million. It's going to be drawn from the Education Trust Fund to fund private schooling and homeschooling. Ends up, I mean, those $24 million could have been something that went to public schools. We could have a priority to fund all low-income students with opportunities for enrichment. But we haven't done that. We have cut public school funding, we have put money into private and homeschooling, and we're still leaving low-income students in schools that don't have adequate resources to address their needs. And that's the argument that I'm putting forward.
Thank you. Senator Hennessy?
Thank you. I think we can agree that we're going to still disagree on the education funding and the amount we send per pupil back to the towns and cities. But I have a question on section, I would say it's 3. Unfortunately, the way bills are written, we do not get what's deleted or repealed. So can you tell me what section 3 does? I don't think we heard any discussion of this in your testimony. It's the majority of the lines of the bill.
Yes. These are changes in compulsory attendance by a pupil that needed to be clarified, with the exception that if there was no Education Freedom Account program, that aspect of how students meet compulsory attendance would not be needed. So that's what's struck from the current statute defining compulsory attendance.
Senator Prentice?
Chair Ward, I have 2 questions for Senator Khan.
Sure, yes. Go
Great,
ahead.
thanks. Thank you, Senator Khan, for taking my questions. So number 1, reflecting on Senator Shardy's statement about the 40, I think you said $4,600 that follows the student, but the rest of the money stays in the school district. That $4,600 that follows that student, that what does that money normally go towards or pay for in a school district or at a school?
Yeah. Well, about 70% of those dollars are going to direct instruction, faculty, teachers, paraprofessionals, special education, and general education costs. And substitute teachers as well. And so what we know in this environment is that school districts are having to provide incentives to attract adequate numbers of teachers. I mean, there's one of the cost increases that schools are facing. But with 204 students less in public schools this fall than what was attending at the end of school last spring, that just does not make for any kind of savings. You distribute those 204 students across the 160,000 students we have in the state, and it doesn't manifest a single classroom being reduced. So the costs aren't being saved at the public school level. We're just adding some costs in to support the enrichment of private school and homeschooled students who qualify with low incomes.
Follow up?
Thank you. So that the need still exists, the instructional capacity still exists, that $4,600 has left with that student. Who makes up the difference?
Thank you for the question, the follow-up question. I see where you're going. And it is the local school district. The costs have not gone away. The revenue to support has gone away, and so that cost needs to be borne by local taxpayers. That's not a part of the $82 million, right?
One more.
Not a question, just a statement. We're going on 31 years out of the first Claremont decision about fair and equal, fair access, fair funding for public education in the state of New Hampshire. So every question that I ask and all of the deliberation that we have around this is about all children in New Hampshire. So I just want to point out that we're that far away and we still haven't fixed the fundamental, it's like the fundamental underlying problem while we're having these conversations. So I'm looking for fairness across the board. Thank you for answering my question about where that money goes and how it's made up when it leaves the local school system. Appreciated. Thank you, Chair Ward.
Thank you. Senator Hennis? No. Anybody else? Committee member? Seeing none. Thank you, Senator Khan.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Tony Likas opposes the bill, does not want to speak. Tamara Johnson? And remember, 3 minutes.
Good morning. I would like to begin by thanking the members for their service to our communities. Representation is a tireless represent. However, with this legislation, it seems that you're content to only represent certain portions of your jurisdictions, not everyone. The state has determined that it is in the interest of society for following generations to be educated. But by discontinuing the EFAs, you are failing to represent the parts of society whose needs are not served by the public education system. We have been sold for years the promise that with diversity comes strength. Why is this body trying to kill the very diversity that it claims to espouse? Diversity of thought, we are told, comes from diversity of experience. Well, standing before you in this room are people of diverse experiences in life as well as in education. If diversity is the strength of a nation, instead of quelling it, you should be seeking to expand it. It is clear from the experience of many in this room that the public school system, which is a service to many, cannot meet the needs of every person in society. Does this body wish to minimize the opportunities of the minority by retracting the limited help offered them through the EFAs? Is it your position that only the children you prefer to serve are worthy of your service? Do the tax dollars of the minority not deserve representation from this body? For various reasons represented here, there are many whose educational needs are not met in the public schools. It might be that we find in these very students the diversity that spawns intelligences such as Albert Einstein or the prowess of, say, a Bill Gates. The EFAs lend a minimal hand to the minority portions of your society, to people you claim to represent. Represent them by maintaining options that serve them, such as the EFA accounts. These accounts have provided opportunities for my children that we could not have afforded for them, as well as needed services that the public schools would not offer. If you begin choosing which sectors of society you choose to serve, where will that stop? Are we not past those days in America where only certain types of people have the same right to an education? If we indeed wish to move past that time in society, do not eliminate the EFAs. Represent all of us by supporting the education of every person you represent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Kayla Johnson? Are the two Kaylas, or do we have another Johnson?
Another Johnson.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kayla, and I do not think you should take away the EFA account.
Could you bring the microphone closer?
Sure.
Either?
Is this better?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kayla Johnson. I do not think you should take away the EFA accounts because they have opened opportunities that would not have had otherwise. Using EFA accounts, I have been able to go to choir, orchestra, being able to participate in dual enrollment for college classes. I've also have access to sculpting software and a better computer that allows me to pursue my learning goals so I can get a job that I'm interested in. Please do not take this opportunity away from me.
You may. Are you? What's your name? State your name. Just turn the microphone around.
My name is Isabel Johnson, and thank you for being here today. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Of the people, by the people, for the people. These are some of the last words in the famous Gettysburg Address, and the most apt description of the American system of government as it was designed. This is the idea that feeds our country's constitution and shaped this nation as we know it. Government for the people, by the people. Our parents are tax-paying citizens, just as much a part of this country as anyone else. We are citizens of this country, soon to become a part of its future. So the question posed today, why should we be treated differently simply because our parents have chosen to educate us in a way that they think is best? My father works hard to take care of us and do his duty and pay taxes, just like parents of public school students. We're not asking for any more than children just like us are getting. We are simply asking to be given the same opportunity. The purpose of government is to serve the people. We are the people. These EFAs are giving me and my siblings more opportunities, such as orchestra and choir. I hope to attend a writing convention using these funds, since writing is something I'm very passionate about. These EFAs are benefiting me and my siblings. Education with less cost to the state than public school students. As a government for the people, it should be your concern to treat your employers, the people, fairly and well. I'm very thankful for all the work you do here to improve my education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you both.
Thank you.
Representative Alicia Lekas.
Representative Alicia Lekis, Hillsborough 37, Hudson and Pelham. I've been a teacher for over 50 years, and one of the things I've been taught all along over and over is that nobody learns the same. Everybody learns differently. Unfortunately, public schools are not set up to teach everybody differently. And as a teacher, yes, we do our best to reach all of the kids, but there are always ones that fall off one end or the other because unfortunately they're set up to be at a certain place at a certain time and move on to the next place at the same time, and all the kids are marched through in the same time period. And as a math teacher, I can tell you that doesn't work very well. Most of these kids, these EFA kids, they started out in public schools. Not all of them, but most of them did. Some only made it through first grade. Some didn't even make it through half of first grade. And they found pretty soon that the way public school worked just didn't work for them. I'm not saying public school's bad. I'm just saying it didn't work for them. It's designed for the average kid, and there is no such thing as an average person. So I'm sorry, my brain just went blank.
You have 2 more minutes.
Okay, so my point is, the state is supposed to provide the opportunity for an adequate education for all students, just like you said. And the state has determined the amount of money or whatever that it should provide for that. And all students should get that. So why are we taking the kids who aren't average, who have, whether they have learning disabilities or learning brilliances, they just don't fit in with the public school and it isn't educating them? Should they not be getting the same as all the kids going to the public schools? That amount of money for an adequate for the opportunity for an adequate education, should not every single student in the state get that? Why should we just give it to public school kids? But I'm sorry, if public school doesn't work for you, you get no money from the state. Somehow now we have no responsibility to those kids to provide that opportunity. And that, you're speaking about fairness, that is what's not fair. Those parents pay taxes, those kids are our kids in our state, and we should be educating them the same as we do every single other kid. So that's...
Thank you. You did it in 3 minutes. Good for you.
I'm used to it.
Senator Hennessy has a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative, for coming today. This bill is tough because we are a policy committee, and so we're supposed to look at the policy of this. And you spoke very elegantly, I think, or eloquently, both, to the policy of giving every kid an opportunity for an adequate education. I just want to talk a little bit about the finances because that's what a lot of the previous speakers have spoken to. And I just want to clarify some things. The $4,600, $4,800 on average that these kids are getting to go either to a private school or to have an alternative education, an EFA, that's coming from the state. It's not coming from local property taxes. And if a student leaves the public school systems, of which 280 have done so across the entire state so far, those school districts on average spend about $19,000 a kid to educate in a public school. So if I do a very rough math, and this is rough, and it's gonna vary by school district, but that means that school districts are not going to have to raise $14,000 in property taxes to educate a kid that's not there. Or maybe they're going to have to raise a little bit because some of the costs are going to be fixed. But this is not going to bankrupt the public school system. Is that your understanding of how the financials of this work?
2 comments on that. One is, yes, the school will save some money. They certainly aren't going to save the $15,000 or $16,000 or whatever that's the difference. but they may well save the 4,000 or 4,600. School populations have been decreasing continuously for the last at least 30 years. But the amount of money schools have been getting has actually been increasing. And schools have been supposed to be figuring out how to close those extra schools they opened, or consolidate classes or whatever, because whether or not there are EFAs, just because the baby boom is over, demographically, we're going to have less children, and schools have to do that. And we keep giving them more money to figure out how, and more money to figure out how. And one of those funds that Senator Khan was talking about was a one-time money thing. So you can't say this is one-time money and then after that say, oh, but we've cut funding by so much. Well, yeah, because we increased funding by so much for one-time money, and then we decreased it back closer to what it was before. So yeah, I'm on the Education Committee, and yeah, we've spent a lot of time dealing with this.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Megan Tuttle?
Good morning, term specifics, but for the record, my name is Megan Tuttle. I'm president for NEA New Hampshire, and I represent more than 17,000 educators across the state. I'm also an 18-year veteran social studies teacher. It's on the educators' behalf that I'm here this morning to testify in favor of Senate Bill 432. As you know, and we've talked about, there's close to 160,000 public school students in New Hampshire. The Department of Education estimated that the EFA program would serve less than 30 students, serve as an alternative to our public schools at a cost of $129,000. We know to date approximately 200, I've heard different numbers, 204, 200, a little over that, public school students chose to take an EFA. So that's slightly more than 0.1% of those students currently enrolled in our public schools opted out using the new EFA law. The other 1,400, or so receiving EFAs this year, or about 82% of EFA students, were not enrolled in public schools. So those approximate 1,400 non-public school students now receive close to $8 million in public funds, public state funds, to continue to attend private and religious schools, representing a 6,000% over budget for the first year, leaving a lot of concern about what the second year is going to bring for the Education Trust Fund, as was mentioned by Senator Khan earlier. As Senator Prentice brought up earlier, we still haven't figured out how to fund education in New Hampshire, public education. It's 31 years since the Claremont decision. I was in college going to, actually it was before college, but I was in college in my certification program with one of the plaintiffs on that. So I have been kind of grown up with that. But the point is, we still haven't figured out how to sufficiently fund our public schools. And on top of this, which are open to all students, we're now starting to fund a separate system on top of that. Public school funding is open and transparent. Public schools are owned, operated, managed by the public. EFA program has outsourced our public education spending for those accounts to a private organization that's not accountable to taxpayers, state, property, local, et cetera, or to the public. School choice exists in New Hampshire. It's always existed in New Hampshire. There's no laws or limits that prevent parents from choosing to send their children to a private, religious, or homeschool. I myself went to both public and private schools. My parents paid for my private school when I went in high school. Every family has that choice. They're free to make that choice. But the choice should never diminish another child's education or obligate other families to help pay for their tuition. That's what New Hampshire's EFA program is doing. Tomorrow's leaders are today's students. I don't think anybody would debate that. And we have some, I'm sure, amazing students here that are going to testify in opposition to myself. And I think it's great that they're here. But public schools help them to get ready to be those leaders for tomorrow. I do urge the members of this committee to vote Senate Bill 432 ought to pass so we can continue our mission preparing 160,000 future leaders in New Hampshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Tuttle, for your testimony. We seem to, be talking about the loss of $4,600, $5,000 per student when state aid moves with the student, and an assumption that the costs evaporate when the student makes that choice. You are familiar with a lot of schools. What's the evaporation effect?
The cost doesn't go away. If we look at the numbers, you know, approximately 200 has been stated that left the public schools to take advantage of EFAs across the state. That's not a huge dent on children leaving public schools. So the costs don't really go down that much in terms of, you know, staffing, in terms of heat in the buildings, in terms of just any everyday costs that you have. The costs are still there. But if the money isn't there, that money is the 4,600, et cetera, isn't there, you know, that has to be made up somewhere.
And, and where is it made up?
From what I'm understanding, and as I've followed, the property taxes that go to pay for the local schools when they come around for votes in March, or, you know, whenever their annual meeting is, if that's the way the town operates, which most do in New Hampshire, the town has to vote up or down money to help educate the children in that district.
That's what I would assume too. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Before we go any further, I'm going to call the next person. Those of you who have already testified, if you could please step outside to allow some of the people who have not had the opportunity to listen to the proceedings, so they have a chance to come in and do a little listening.
Ava, could you please tell everybody how they can listen to the audio if they have to leave the room? Thank you.
So for anyone who has testified already and would like to continue to watch this public hearing, it is being live streamed on YouTube through the New Hampshire Senate live stream page. There is also a QR code outside in the hall, outside of the committee room, right outside of the door that you can use via your phone.
Okay, the next person here is Kate Baker. Is Kate Baker around?
My turn to speak.
Yeah, Kate Baker? To the podium, please.
I was live streaming in the hall there.
Oh.
It's not quite exactly in time, just so you know. There's a slight delay when you're in the hall. Kate Baker here from Children's Scholarship Fund. I have a mom that's a single mom that cleans houses. And she asked me to read this letter to you very specifically, and I promised her that I would do that. And so...
If you can do it in 3 minutes.
Oh, I can absolutely do it in 3 minutes. Her letter says, I am mortified to hear you are against and fighting to undo the recently implemented EFAs in New Hampshire. As someone that's been a fan of yours, I'm highly disappointed in your lack of awareness of how good the EFAs are for thousands of New Hampshire children and their families. I, for one, am a recipient of a New Hampshire EFA, and I use it for transportation expenses. The money that it saves me every month is a lifesaver. I would use it to pay for my child's education, but at this point, I'm fortunate enough to receive adequate financial aid from my private school and a grant from Children's Scholarship Fund. We can't predict life's ups and downs, and before you know it, I was a single mom of a 10-year-old. I needed financial help to send my child to a school that was the right fit for her. In 2013, my ex-husband had to leave the country, and I don't receive any child support because he's not required to send it to me. I raised my daughter with no financial help at all. That's where Children's Scholarship Fund stepped in. I am now the proud mother of a soon-to-be graduated senior at High Mowing Waldorf School in Wilton. My daughter has been in Waldorf school since first grade. None of her education would have been possible without this help. I often feel people are quick to judge things, people, or circumstances, especially when it comes to education. My child has no learning disabilities or medical issues that keep her from being able to attend a regular public school. I just simply believe in Waldorf education, the small class size, and the arts-focused curriculum. However, many children are not as lucky as my child. Some children need more attention. They need to have a school that's a good fit for them, that's not determined by their zip code. It seems the #1 argument against EFAs is the money the public school doesn't receive when a child is taken from them, thus lowering the overall school enrollment numbers. The EFAs have been more than thoughtful when pulling a child from a private school by giving the local school the phase-out grants. Also, with COVID in our presence still, children need more help than ever to have a good fit for them, as depression and suicide is at an all-time high. Our children are our future, and they need every leg up they can get. I urge you to reconsider your stance on EFAs. And Senator Khan, this is your constituent, Heather Harada. That's all I have today.
Any questions from the committee members? Thank you, Kate. Rusan? Rusan? I think Rusan Chester, if I remember right. Okay, thank you. Barry Christina.
Thank you, Chairman Ward. Good morning, members of the committee. Barrett Christina from the New Hampshire School Boards Association. We are in support of Senate Bill 432. Primarily, NHSBA has two longstanding resolutions adopted by our members opposing vouchers and EFAs and other sorts of quote-unquote scholarship programs. We've had these on the books, the first one since 1991, the second one since 2005, adopted and reaffirmed by our school board members every year subsequently. So that's the basis of our support for this bill. NHSBA opposes vouchers, scholarship programs, EFAs, whatever you want to call it. The diversion of public money to private entities is something we oppose. Second, relative to the fiscal aspect of this, I did submit written testimony. I apologize. I may have had some of my numbers wrong. Senator Khan, I believe you mentioned that our current count is 204 students that were previously in public schools last year but are now enrolled in the EFA program. My letter indicates 280 students. I think part of the problem, though, is some of the numbers coming from the department are tough to gauge and determine how accurate they are. We've seen with the fiscal note and now the current fiscal problem with it being $8 million cost when we were anticipating $128,000. Another aspect, it's important for this committee to know that the State Board of Education has been trying to develop rules around the EFA program. They sent a version to GELCAR. GELCAR had to redline the whole thing and send them back to the State Board of Education. So it's still within that process. But more than anything, it indicates that the current statute is in such disorder that the state board is unable to develop rules that GELCAR will approve and adopt for the implementation of this program. So as a result, we have a program that's operating more than $7,500,000 over budget with no rules in place to guide those accessing the program or overseeing the program. The other current problems with the current bill is there's absolutely nothing in there relative to student safety. NHSBA finds that completely disturbing. There's nothing in the law that requires these education providers undergo criminal background checks of any sort. There's nothing in the current law relative to data privacy for students, which is absolutely concerning. Circling back to some of the fiscal aspects a little bit, we know that there are approximately 1,650 kids currently receiving this education freedom account. 208 or 204 or so, whatever the number is, were currently enrolled in public schools last year and are now receiving this. So we're subsidizing individuals who seem to be paying for private schools and homeschooling themselves. And while shifting some of that money away from public schools, I know there's argument that money wasn't going to public schools anyway. There are a lot of ways in which the state is historically underfunded payments to public schools. So if we have 200 kids that were in public schools last year receiving this education savings account, whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to round up the numbers to $5,000, Senator, to make the numbers easy. That's $1 million right there, right, for the public school kids that left the program. $8 million price tag, though, remind you that the state has historically underfunded special education catastrophic aid to the tune of, coincidentally, about $7 million a year for the last 20 years. So there are other ways in which this money could be spent in public education, in public schools. The other aspect, which I think is very, very interesting, is we have a lot of talk in this committee and House Education and throughout the legislature about the cost per pupil, and it's whatever you want, $18,000, $19,000, $20,000 per pupil. 200 kids that left public schools to enroll in this program with an $8 million price tag. That's $40 million. That's $40,000 per student, because we know that some of the students that are accessing this were not accessing it last year or the year before. So it's costing the state $8 million to provide education, new choice for 200 kids. That's $40,000 per year. So the implication is that it costs twice as much money to educate a child leaving a public school who takes part of this program than it does to cost a child in a traditional public school.
Mr. Christina,
So-
I hate to interrupt you, but you're taking 5 minutes
Thank you very
at this
much.
point. Could you
Thank
wrap
you
it
very
up?
much, Madam Chair.
You're all set? Any questions from the committee members?
Yeah.
Senator Khan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Christina. So you mentioned the underfunding of public schools, and you mentioned special education students. I think we probably put $2,000 extra per special education student towards a maybe $20,000 extra cost a year on average. And that's like 30,000 students. The free and reduced price lunch students, I think we're putting about $2,000 extra per year. That's the difference between 4,000 and 6,000. And I mean, they don't come close to what the real difference in the cost of bringing this equalized opportunities to those students. And so is it your sense that the system is, how broken is this system, and what's the repair?
I'm sorry, what's
the repair? How do we get
what's the
to
repair?
something that treats all students to get to the same outcome?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I'm not going to turn this into a debate about school funding per se, but I will say, you know, when the number of $19,000 per student gets bantered around, or $20,000 per student gets bantered around, that's the cost to operate a school. That's not the cost to educate a child. Many of the costs incurred, most of them driven down and raised by local property taxes, are unfunded mandates. Or if not a specific mandate where we have to buy or purchase something, it's a new obligation that is imposed on local school districts. NHSBA collaborated with the Municipal Association, the Association of Counties, and a couple other stakeholders last fall we conducted a webinar primarily geared towards legislators, where the towns talked about the downshifting of costs. Retirement systems. The state wants to pick up a portion of retirement costs. We'd be happy to take it and then divert some of the other money raised locally to actual educational programs to hopefully increase outcomes. But that doesn't happen. So, I mean, I don't want to get into the whole aspect about school funding, but you know, the simple answer is the cost per pupil is not what it costs to educate a child, and the downshifting of costs that may inhibit or may otherwise prevent some child who wants to take advantage of this program from not receiving a full educational opportunity fit for that child in a public school is, from NHSBA's standpoint, is the result of the legislature over the last decade.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Allison Dyer? 3 minutes.
Good morning. I just typed it large, so. Good morning, Allison Dyer, Nashua, New Hampshire. I am here today as a resident of New Hampshire all my life, and I am opposed to this bill, SB 432, to repeal the New Hampshire Education Freedom Accounts. It's extremely disheartening that the sponsors of this bill seek to repeal a program that has and will continue to benefit so many of the hardworking New Hampshire families and children. A program that gives so many parents relief, because if this last decade has taught us anything, it's that education is not a one-size-fits-all. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that every child learns differently, and that if we are to educate the next generation of Americans, the ones who will take yours and my place in the world, in the years to come, it's their educational successes that cannot be measured in standard terms, nor should they be. School choice and the EFA program allows parents and children to remove themselves from school safety issues. It allows parents and children to be more involved in their education. It allows education to be tailored to the needs of the individual student and provides so many low-income families the ability to break the barrier between where they live to what school they attend. In Nashua, where I live, the poverty rate is 10.8%. So 1 out of every 9.3 residents of Nashua lives in poverty. The education freedom accounts mean not only access to quality education opportunities, but an educational environment that fits their child and family situations best. That isn't conditional on families' ability to afford housing or residence in an area that their current income situation does not allow for. Each year in Nashua, we watch the budget go up, but we have only had positive enrollment years twice since 2008. Every 3 to 4 years, we watch a heated and sometimes extremely toxic contract negotiation between the teachers union and our Board of Education for our tax dollars in closed-door meetings of which we as taxpayers and parents have no part in the process. As many of you are aware, school choice programs like EFA show in studies win-wins for taxpayers and students, like the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program, which also showed a positive rate for student graduation. Our New Hampshire EFA program has had immense interest in applications in its first year of availability. Why do you think that is? The pandemic forced the nation, including New Hampshire students and families, into involuntary home learners. Predictably, this approach didn't suit everyone. More families than ever before have seen the benefits of alternative tailored education environments and how their children learn best. So I remain perplexed, as I am not sure why the sponsors of this bill seek to decimate education freedom accounts and remove these educational opportunities and benefits from their New Hampshire residents and children. As parents, naturally, we want to give our kids every opportunity they can to do better. Setting students up for success should be the first consideration, not just for parents, but for our state and local governments when it comes to deciding how best to support education. I can only conclude that your goal is to continue to secure backing of teachers' unions, which remains fervently against parents' choice of taking their children out of public schools, even to other public schools, when parents feel that education being provided does not suit their children's educational needs. Instead of fighting against what is best for the children and families of this state, why are you not able to see your way through to empower those low-income families with the ability to choose the best individualized K-12 educational path for their children, which is something that we know high-income parents do every day by paying to send their children to schools of their choice? In Nashua, in the last 2+ years, I personally have spoken and heard the sometimes loud but sometimes silent sobs of so many mothers and fathers struggling with and in their child's current school environment. One mother lamented to me for months that her daughter was being sexually assaulted, being grabbed, pushed, pulled, groped inappropriately in the hallway by a group of boys and girls almost daily for 4 months. This had been reported weekly to the superintendent and principal, and even with allowances that were sometimes made for her child to leave class early to avoid the hallway crowd, and even with teacher escorts, these harassers always found a way. Even when those who were harassing this young girl were serving in or out of school suspensions, they often returned to denigrate and degrade this 12-year-old girl.
Allison, you're up to 4 minutes now.
Sorry.
Can you wrap it up?
Yes. Her mother cried often to me, locked in her bathroom at home on her phone, feeling so stuck in a situation with no results from her consistent and constant reporting. But then a beacon of light for mothers and fathers struggling so much. The New Hampshire EFA is passed into law. These types of stories and struggles are not isolated incidents. They are not one-offs from the norm. For so many struggling parents feeling stuck and hopeless here in New Hampshire, EFAs have given them their dignity back. So many mothers and fathers felt like they were failing because they did not have the financial means and power to be able to give their children the best educational environment or opportunities that all parents have a basic parental instinct desperately want to do for their children. EFAs give them that power. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Senators. My name is Faith Hohenadel, and I'm a junior at Holy Family Academy. I am also Vice President of our student government, the President of the Pro Life Club, and I participate on the varsity basketball, soccer, and track teams. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of my school and other students like myself. Being able to attend a school that holds the core values of what I believe is important to me into my formation as a person. At Holy Family Academy, everything is centered around our faith. We're able to attend Mass daily, pray the Rosary as a school weekly, and pray multiple times throughout the day. These activities help me and my classmates grow in our faith and grow together as a school community. The small class sizes at Holy Family Academy allow for more individual attention for each student from our teachers. In each class, every student is encouraged and required to participate in the discussion. Each of us has a voice. Our small class sizes also allow for us to use the Socratic Method as a form of discussion. The Socratic Method is a conversation where the students are asked to question their thoughts. It allows for open-ended questions that help the students and teachers better understand the topic. We must be able to converse about the material, challenge each other's ideas, and discover new information together. Using the Socratic Method teaches me to always seek the truth, and this truth helps each of us become a better formed member of society. Lastly, Holy Family has a wonderful community. Each student and teacher truly cares about one another. From the day I shadowed at HFA to now, I walk into school every day with an overwhelming sense of joy and love. Each senior knows every other student by name, and not only do students spend time in their own class, but you will see a 7th grader eating lunch with a senior or an 8th grader playing chess with a junior. Our teachers are not only interested in us growing in knowledge and in our education, but they help us grow in love for one another and in character. They will do anything to help us succeed. If you're behind in Latin, Mr. Rocha will stay after school until 5 o'clock to help you catch up. If you're having a bad day, Miss Boyle will be there with a box of tissues and ready to talk. And Mr. Harned will check up on you to see if you need extra help with your essay that he knows you're struggling with. HFA is a culture of joy, love, and support. It is a family. If the New Hampshire Education Freedom Account is taken away, I would not be able to attend Holy Family Academy. I would not have this wonderful family that I've gained from attending HFA, and I do not know who I would be without it. Taking away this account would not solely affect schools and teachers, but it directly affects families and students like myself. So please, I entreat you not to eliminate the New Hampshire Education Freedom Account. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you. Emma Jackson? And again, if you have written testimony, we can have it and summarize it.
All right.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Emma Jackson. I'm a 10th grader at a private Catholic classical school called Holy Family Academy. First, thank you, Senators, for this opportunity to speak about my school. I'm here to encourage you to keep the Education Freedom Account program, which helps pay for my brother and I to attend a school we both love. We love Holy Family for many reasons, but mainly for the opportunity to use primary sources, to practice a culture of kindness, and to celebrate the Catholic faith in all we do. As part of our liberal arts education, we use primary sources. When learning about our nation's history, we read sections of the Declaration of Independence. Primary sources are mainly used in history class, but are not limited to history. We read a source and talk and ask questions about it in a seminar discussion. These sources require us, as students, to think and debate about the author's meaning and intent. Our teacher is always ready to guide the discussion in the right direction, with questions for us, while also answering any questions we have. This leads to a deeper understanding of the time period and the source itself. Another reason why I love Holy Family Academy is the atmosphere of welcome and kindness. I started Holy Family Academy last year as a freshman. Despite social distancing and mask regulations, my classmates still made me feel welcome. As the new kid, I was not ignored, but invited into new friendships. By the end of the first week, I was completely part of the class. This welcome I got not just from my class, but the entire school. From our principal to the teachers to the students, everyone has a spirit of kindness in all activities and classes. The best part of Holy Family Academy, however, is the faith in every aspect of our day. At Holy Family Academy, the Catholic faith is the most important part of our education. We begin every day with Mass, which brings focus to my day. My mornings are usually pretty hectic up until Mass. Every class starts with a prayer, and before lunch we say the Angelus and thank God for our food. All grades have a religious class where we come to understand the Catholic faith more. This year I'm learning about the life of Christ. As a class, we read through the Gospel of Matthew and make connections between Jesus' life and the Old Testament. We begin this class with scriptorium, which is where you read a passage of the Bible and write down a verse that speaks to you. As students, we are constantly encouraged by our teachers and coaches to ask questions, learn about, and live the Catholic faith. To conclude, I can't picture myself graduating from another school except Holy Family Academy. My dear senators, I implore you, do not eliminate the Get Education Freedom Account program. This program helps so many students and their families. Think of your sons, daughters, nieces, nephews, or grandchildren. You would want to give them an education in a community that they love with teachers that support them. Therefore, keeping the Education Freedom Account program will aid many students that need this to go to school and have a happy education. Thank you for your time.
Welcome. Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Thank you very much. Christy Whipple.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Nice to see you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you in opposition to Bill 432. I'm in my 16th year as the head of the Newport Montessori School, which is an approved non-public school established in 2005 in Newport, New Hampshire. And I'm honored to share with you that I have a big anniversary this year. It's my 30th year as an experienced educator certified by the state of New Hampshire. 2 years ago, as public schools announced what they were or were not doing with regard to the COVID-19 pandemic, our school experienced an increase in enrollment by 14%. Our school moved forward with in-person learning while keeping precautions and protocols in place to keep students, staff, and their families as safe as possible. The EFAs have leveled the opportunity for all families to access choice with regard to the best learning environment for their student. Affluent families have always had this choice. Low-income families have wonderful scholarship opportunities to help their students access their choices. It has been these middle-income families, though, who make or have just a bit too much to qualify for the low-income scholarship support. They've been trapped by their means and by their zip codes. Our school has a current enrollment of 108 students. 11 students are using their EFA money this year to supplement their ability to pay our $8,600 annual tuition. From earlier testimony, I'm hearing concerned folks ask for more oversight to achieve accountability. From the school side of EFAs, we must be an approved non-public school as defined and regulated by the New Hampshire Department of Education. For our school, we must go through a renewal of approval every 3 years. From my many years as a public school teacher, the accreditation there is every 10 years. This means our school will go through 3 approval times for every 1 public school approval. We're open to more oversight by way of participation in standardized testing, as this is something we administer annually already. The question would become, though, who would you like us to share the results of those tests with, keeping in mind students' privacy? I want to thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions as an administrator of a school receiving EFA funds.
Thank you, Christy. Any questions from the committee members? Senator Hennessy.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. Can you share your testimony with Ava?
It's in my left-handed slanted writing. I'd be happy to share it with you, or I could type it and send it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Senator Khan has a question for you,
Ms.
Christy.
Whipple?
Christy? Senator Khan has a question.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Last week, we happened to be hearing some things that had to do with the frequency of the accreditation of a private school. It's is there any outcome information that you provide, educational outcomes, to the Department of Education?
Are there any what?
Educational outcomes.
In terms of, are you asking, do we share report cards or the standardized testing results?
Standardized testing results, attendance rates, graduation rates?
We do have to do attendance reporting, and we do share the results of our standardized tests.
With the department?
So for a district choice, like Croydon is a good example, they're using their taxpayer money to send their students to our school with that tuition that they've raised through taxpayers. So we report their standardized testing to that superintendent.
A fairly unique example of a private school that's been chosen by the, but I understand what you're saying. It's not the example that would be common across another 70
And I
private
can't really speak for other schools. I can only speak that we do reporting attendance to the State Department of Ed, and we do standardized test reporting to those districts that send them to us. So I can't speak for what other schools do or do not do, but I know we have to, and we certainly do.
I understand the unique circumstances of your school. That is not the common submission, but thank you for taking the question.
It's unique, but it's not unique to us. It's what we've always done. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Matt Southerton? Not here? Nope. Okay. How about Rocky? Is it Packy or Rocky? Campbell?
Packy Campbell.
Packy Campbell, okay. Welcome.
Welcome. It's an Irish name. My mother gave it to me. As we've established, my name is Packy Campbell, and I am the father of my children, husband to my wife, a New Hampshire small business owner, and I happen to be a former New Hampshire state rep where I served on the House Education Committee and struggled with Claremont for a number of years, some 20 years ago. So I'd like to, first warn the proponents of this bill that, I think this is, a good program. Educational freedom is what it's all about here in New Hampshire, and Live Free or Die means something to me, and this program supports that. I'd also warn you that on occasion I've given testimony and gotten people to change their mind. So I'm hoping that you're open to the possibility that there's some magic word I could say that you might say, holy cow, good point. So I'll start out with one. When I first heard about this program from Kate Baker back when I was a state rep, I was broke. I was looking for change in my ashtray to buy a gallon of milk for my 4 children. All 4 of my kids were in private school. And the fact that this program was proposed and possible gave me hope that I could fight one more year to keep my kids in the Catholic school that I served on the school board for 8 years. And I struggled, and I did that. And I was never availed of this program. It wasn't available at that time. I now am glad to say I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'm a donor to this program. I'm able to donate in 5 different companies that I own. And I'm proud of that. But more importantly, you should change your mind on this bill because it does a unique thing. When I was in the House, we had proposed 21st century scholarships was essentially the same thing, a tax credit for school choice. Did not pass. This bill that you see before you is kind of a version of that. And when you get the 85% tax credit from the state of New Hampshire for the money I donate, I also get to deduct that as a federal income tax deduction. And when you look at a 37% tax bracket, that's actually 122% on the dollar. So I am taking federal dollars that I would have given the federal government, and it's being spent on education in my state. That's a wonderful thing about this program. And not a lot of people realize the value of that. And as they get more and more donors, they realize I can donate $1 and save 22 cents and support choice in education and students to have those opportunities. It's a very powerful program. I think any program that takes federal money and allows us to spend it locally is something you should consider supporting. There used to be a thing when we were in education back in the day, it's 2000s, they said it takes a village to raise a child. I used to find that a little bit offensive, but I understood it. And the only thing I asked for is the opportunity to choose the village in which my child is going to be raised. And choosing that village should not be dependent on the size of my wallet. Having gone up and down that economic spectrum a few times, hopefully I'll stay on this end of it now, but you cannot tell people that their religious freedom is dependent on the money in their wallet. You cannot tell people that the adequate education belongs to government-run institutions and unions. Really, that's the 600-pound gorilla in the room, is we're diverting money away from union environments into non-union environments. And I think we have to acknowledge that. And there's a lot of pushback from that. Unions have become a political organization here in New Hampshire and a political arm. They don't want, and I don't blame them, they should protect unions, that's their job. But we shouldn't put unions and bureaucracies, you see what I'm saying? Doesn't it touch your heart? We shouldn't put unions and bureaucracies ahead of students and opportunity to an adequate education. You weren't entitled to some outcome. You weren't entitled to standardized testing results of some amount. You're entitled to an opportunity. This bill gives kids opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. The adequate education grant, sir, does not belong to the local school district. Matter of fact, these 8,000 or so, 9,000, 10,000, back in the day, 20,000 students that were in private schools, they didn't get the adequate education grant. The state didn't send it anyways. The adequate education grant right now is being spent on roads and bridges. It's not being spent on education. At least this program, where the adequate education now follows the kids that have the scholarship, at least it's being spent on education. Previously, it didn't go to the local district. They're not in attendance. You only get the adequate education grant if you're in attendance. And let me tell you a little bit about adequate education.
3 minutes are up, so can you wrap it up, please?
Yeah, I'll wrap it up. It's 85% dependent on the equalized assessed value in your community. So I'm from Farmington, New Hampshire. We're a poor community. We're the number 8 poorest community in New Hampshire. So we get money, more money from the state than what we pay in the statewide property tax. So when we designed how money is done, it's not really about English as a second language, free and reduced lunch, and IEPs. It's part of it. It's about 15%. About 85% of that is based on your equalized assessed value. So we target money to the poor communities. I'm tired of hearing money is the answer. 20 years ago, I got $2.5 million, 22% more money from my local district. They've been getting it for 20 years. It hasn't helped. We got to try something different. We got to give people opportunities to make choices, and school districts will respond when they see students leaving. And by the way, more than 204 students have left public education every single year for the last 20 years since I was in the House. It's more like 2,000. And they did it without scholarships and without opportunities. So that speaks to how much people want these opportunities. We should respect it and we should do it. We should have the adequate education grant follow all students, and it should go to the education environment that they're in. That's what this bill starts to do. We need to do more of that. I hope that you will withdraw your bill and or vote inexpedient to legislate.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Does they have Honorable Lisa and Freeman?
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair and honorable members of the Senate Education Committee. I come before you today staunchly opposed to Senate Bill 432, which would repeal the education freedoms accounts. In the interest of time, Madam Chair, even before you announce a 3-minute limit, I'm going to keep this very brief and succinct. It's 3 minutes, right on the dot.
Great, thank you.
As a former Board of School Committee member in Manchester for 4 years, I had received many numerous complaints and correspondence with parents, teachers, and stakeholders around issues that were never resolved, such as bullying, poor school performance, and gangs. They only came to me after they had exhausted all their other resources, such as utilizing the chain of command in public school systems. You go to the principal, you go to assistant superintendent, et cetera. All of the appropriate channels they used were to no avail. And only because those appropriate channels are established by the Public Education Institute. Now, when I refer to the Public Education Institute, I am not referring to teachers, school-level administrators, nurses, therapists, paraprofessionals, counselors, social workers, secretaries, cafeteria workers, or bus drivers. Those individuals are on the proverbial front lines, and many are unwilling to publicly voice their issues for fear of retribution, notably by some of their unions. For many years, stakeholders have brought their concerns, issues, or problems to this very same Public Education Institute to be disregarded, ridiculed, minimalized, and ignored, all at their expense of our most precious commodity, our children's education, and subsequently their future. Hence, education freedom accounts and the school choice movement, which did not develop in a vacuum, but rather out of a necessity when the Public Education Institute refused to address those stakeholders' concerns, issues, and frustrations. To deny 1,635 low-income and poor children an opportunity to be equal, and after all, isn't equity the buzzword in public education right now? I know it's in Manchester. An opportunity to be equal with their wealthier and more affluent peers is quintessentially discrimination. In conclusion, I have not cited statistics, schools utilized, demographics, etc., as I am strictly here not as a school choice advocate or formally elected official, but as a distressed, uneasy member of a community whose most vulnerable children deserve every opportunity available to them for self-enrichment and betterment. The school choice movement is not anti-public education. It is pro-child, as it should be. And I actually wanted to address something that Mr. Christina had stated about the funding. 230 children do not use up $8 million, Senator Khan. We have a program that has 1,635 children. So I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Senator Glynes.
Yeah, no, thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks for your testimony, but I never claimed that that math was correct. So, but
Just for clarification, but thank you for that.
I think that served well. But I appreciate your perspectives. We are all pro-child in this committee, and we just have more children that we need to serve than just 1,635 students. And thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Claire Berth.
Hello,
Welcome.
my name is Claire Worth. I go to
Yeah, sit close to the microphone, either that or pull that closer to you.
I go to Laconia Christian Academy, and education is important to all of us. School choice is a way to provide better education for students. I believe all states should have school choice,
Could you
especially.
speak into the microphone?
Sorry, I'm sorry. Should I start over or? I believe all states should have school choice, especially in my home state. I go to a private school in New Hampshire. I've been there for 9 years. The taxes of the state go to public school. Kristen Newman is the governor of New Hampshire and passed a bill for the state providing taxes going to school choice, which started on August 5th, 2021. This has benefited many people around me and even myself. It is important to have school choice because getting a fair education can come from all forms rather than just public school. My mother is a single parent, and when I came here in 3rd grade, I remember I originally came from a public school and I struggled with reading. And something that the public school wasn't helping me with was learning how to read and read well. And I definitely do think the teachers at LCA really care about who we turn out to be. They don't just want our grades to be A's. They don't just want us to graduate, but they want us to go out into the world and be Christians and sons and daughters of the Lord. Sorry. And I definitely really appreciate all the hard work and effort they stick into us. With my mom being a single parent, the past year money has really benefited us, and before my brother graduated last year, it helped also him and I as well. And
Are you finished?
sorry. Yes.
Are you finished?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very
Sorry.
much. Raphael. Welcome.
Thank you.
State your name and
Yes, my name is Raphael.
3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Rafael Vasquez. I attend Laconia Christian Academy. Now, before the Education Freedom Act was passed, my mother had to take up a job in order to be able to send me and my brother to Laconia Christian. Because of numerous disabilities, my mother hasn't been able to work too much, and even the work she can do pushes her physical limits. After the EFA was passed, my mother was able to quit her job, which did a lot of good for her physical and mental health, as well as being able to give her full attention and time to me and the rest of my family while maintaining my education that I value. I believe without a doubt that my education has prepared me for college and the things to come after in a way that I believe can't be matched. I've been pushed beyond what I think I can do, both inside and outside of the school environment. Time and time again, I've been surprised with what I've been able to accomplish, as well as how far I've come since the beginning of high school, and none of that would have been possible if my parents were unable to send me to LCA. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now there, Shalimar.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Senate Education Committee. We have so many families that have received assistance through the CFA program, families that need the program. We have kids that are behind grade level and struggling in their public schools, but they thrive in smaller classrooms at other schools. Kids whose learning styles make remote learning extremely difficult are benefiting from the CFA program. And kids who are experiencing racism and bullying in their schools are also benefiting from this EFA program. I work at the Children's Scholarship Fund, but for years I've been an advocate of school choice. As a Latina woman and as a mom of 3 children of all who have had certain disabilities, starting from multiple sclerosis, cancer survivor, and my youngest who has nonverbal learning disorder and ADHD. At CSF, we have many cases of kids over the years that have been bullied and discriminated against because of their skin color. And we as an organization have been so fortunate to be able to bless these children with funds so they can go to school where they have blossomed. However, today I have a couple of stories that have happened recently. One of them has happened recently, which has shaken us all to the core. The EFA program must be allowed to continue. And these 2 stories are polar opposites. One of how the EFA actually helps a child, and the other of how not having an EFA has destroyed a child. Caden, and this has happened most recently, is a 12-year-old 7th grader. Up until recently, he was a National Public Middle School student. He was assaulted by 2 other students while another student did a TikTok video, which incidentally showed a teacher standing by, not intervening. He was dragged to the ground. Then he had his head repeatedly stomped on by these other students, and still, no one intervened. School authorities later said teachers were not allowed to intervene and were instructed to wait for the school resource officer to arrive and break up the assault. This was in New Hampshire. This was within the last 6 months. How is this a thing? Had it not been for the existence of the EFA program, Caden's grandfather would have had to leave Caden at the mercy of these bullies and a system that is unwilling to protect him. The second story is about my son, Angel. He's 19 years old. And he did not have access to an EFA account back when he was starting high school. Angel has ADHD and nonverbal learning disorder. He was repeatedly denied an IEP, though he had direct recommendations from a neuropsychologist. I appealed and was denied again. So Angel is now a 3rd-year senior. He has struggled with online school during the shutdowns. He was in a program in his first senior year, called the GSIL at Central High School, which was shut down, and he was mainstreamed without a meeting with me or his father. Angel still wants to get his diploma, but he's lost hope, and frankly, I don't blame him. These COVID times have wiped out much of many people's hopes. This HOPE program helps thousands of students, and some are like Hayden, and some are like Angel. There needs to be an intentional movement away from reducing students, children, to a dollar sign and begin to see them as investments. We need to invest in our future leaders and our caretakers. We need to ensure that our future is filled with the best our generation can give them. Hope and a chance to develop their God-given abilities to become the best versions of themselves. And in doing so, be able to give back to their families, their communities, their cities, and our country. We have a chance to do that right here, right now. What will your choice be?
Thank you very much. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Violet Manson?
My name is Violet Manson. I'm 18 years old. I live in Plymouth, New Hampshire, and I'm a senior at Laconia Christian Academy. I started attending Laconia Christian because of unfortunate circumstances. Freshman and sophomore year, I attended public school at Plymouth Regional High School, my local high school. Halfway through my sophomore year, I had my second heart surgery. When I went back to school, my teachers refused to help me. I had to drop core classes because I was not getting the assistance that I needed. Around that time, I started to get depressed. I couldn't even get out of bed anymore, so I did online school. I was not supported by my teachers or peers. I was mocked and made fun of. Rumors were spread that I had dropped out. My friends weren't even talking to me anymore. A few months later, junior year started, and again, I was miserable. My mom and I found this small private school, hoping that we would be able to afford it. I transferred high schools and retook my sophomore year. I was welcomed and greeted with kindness. I kept high A and B grades. I have found people who accept and love me. My teachers support me 100%, and I went on to have my third heart surgery and got full support from my teachers and peers. I'm the captain of our school basketball team, and this money helps us get new uniforms for our girls and boys teams. It allows us to have enough money to replace our 20-year-old carpet floors with tile. Our drama program is able to thrive in an actual theater as opposed to our school gym. Each child, regardless of their money situation at home, deserves to have a choice in their education. These EFAs have given me an opportunity that I am so blessed to have, and I want others' kids to be able to experience them as well.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. How about Sarah Glynes?
Hello. My name is Sarah Glynes. I am a senior at Laconia Christian Academy. I've been attending LCA since I was in 7th grade, and my older sister was in 9th grade. I've enjoyed every moment and year that I've been at LCA. While I was at LCA, my 4 younger siblings were not able to attend LCA because we were unable to afford it. My older sister graduated in 2020, and after that year, the remaining of my siblings joined us at LCA, so the 5 of us have gone to LCA now. Through the EFA program, we are able to afford LCA much better than we were in the past. Even with the school's financial aid and help through it, my parents were still struggling to afford to send us all to school. This was a school that we chose that we would like to go to and we wanted to go to, and my parents believed it was the best choice for our education. Even though we struggled with it, we still found a way to get through it and be able to attend LCA, where we were accepted by everybody, the teachers and students, and have thrived. I believe that the EFA program should continue to stay and support everybody who, whether they can't afford a school or whether they can, and be able to have the opportunity to choose the school that they would like to go to. Such as me and my family, how we prefer to go to LCA, and that's the school that we choose to go to, and the CFA program has allowed us to benefit and go to the school of our choice rather than going to a school that we originally did not want to go to. I'm all set.
Thank you.
Yes.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Kelly Santos.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope I can be as brave as the kids that are here today. We'll see. So I've spoken in front of the Education Committee before, so I won't get into all of what I've gone through with my oldest child in the public school system, but I do need to address being one of those families who moved from the school system, utilized the EFA program to go to a private school. That's what my family has done. I've since added a second child to kindergarten this year, and they have moved to Second Nature Academy in Nashua. And to put it in my son's words, he said, the public school taught us 1 or 2 concepts a year, and I get to learn many, many more concepts now. He was one of those students, thank you, who was diagnosed with ADHD, a sensory processing disorder, specific learning disability in reading and written expression. Through the IEP process, he was never tested by the school, which fails the child find mandate. He was denied year after year in IEP. The written prior notice that I was given stated, the school does not recognize his disabilities at this time. The reason given is he does well academically. My child is one of those children who are twice exceptional. He is gifted, he is highly intelligent, and he has these learning disabilities he has to deal with, along with his ADHD. So the school did not recognize half of what he's bringing to school with him each day and what he needs to deal with. This child struggled, but was able to pass the standardized testing and what the school needed to deem him okay. With that, they denied him services. So as a family, we pay for speech therapy. We pay for occupational therapy. We pay for physical therapy. We are the source rather than the public school system. The public school system failed my child. We looked into the charter school systems. We do not have the funds to send him to private school. It's $25,000 a year to send these 2 children to Second Nature Academy, where they are both thriving. Where my son came home and took his English homework in a magnet and slammed it across the refrigerator so that I could see he got 10 out of 10 on his homework. This child needs to be in this school. I utilize the EFA scholarship, the Children's Scholarship Funds, and the YES Scholarship Program to be able to afford this. When the senator called me last night because I had called and left him a message, I actually hung up on him because I thought he was a bill collector. So my husband went to Berkeley College in Boston. We're still paying those student loans. My husband and I, we own a duplex. We have tenants. We pay more in property taxes than the $4,600 that we're asking for with the EFA. We pay those property taxes. Not all of that $19,000 per student is following my child. 20% of that is going to follow my child. The public school is now using the rest of that money on other children. They failed my child, and I cannot even take all of those tax dollars with me. I have to leave that for other children while my child and I look for resources. And I'll tell you, this has been a full-time job looking for these scholarships. And when they started in September, I did not have approval for all of those scholarships. That was still on our shoulders. We were still feeling that burden until last week when I got a word that the final scholarship had gone through for my youngest. You failed my student. They give back to the taxpayers $700,000 per year. Some of that budget comes from special education. They did not use a dime to test my son. They did not use a dime to give him OT, even though his classroom was across the hall from that room. They did not use that money. You asked the school board, what is the answer? Hold the public schools accountable. Hold the public schools accountable without parents paying thousands of dollars for neuropsych evaluations, without the parents paying thousands of dollars for lawyers to fight the school lawyers, which our tax dollars are paying for.
Kelly, we're dealing
I am
with
done.
the bill who has to do with the EFAs.
The
You
EFA
want the
allows my child to get the education the public school failed to give
You
him.
like the EFAs to stay?
I'm sorry?
Are you saying that you want the EFA program
I
to stay?
oppose this bill. I would like the EFA to continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from the committees? Seeing none, thank you very much. Alexandria.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. As a teen, I actually, I was bullied in school, and I went to live with my grandmother and my aunt a few towns away from from my parents, simply to take advantage of a better school. So I understand the lengths that parents are willing to go to make sure their child doesn't get lost in the system or neglected. I'm a mother of 5. I do have one, my eldest, who went through primarily public school, and generally speaking, it worked for her. But I do have one child in particular who was really getting lost in the system. So we had tried public school and then a public charter school, and this EFA has made it possible for us to find a school that really, I mean, it works. It's working for my son and my other 2 children who are enrolled now. And I have one more I am hoping to enroll, God willing, this upcoming fall when hopefully we have the EFA account again. I just can't, I'm not exaggerating when I say that this has made a huge impact in my life financially. The positive ripple effect for my family is just, I've never been so proud to be in this state, and I thank any of you who were involved in the original, education freedom accounts, passing that. Thank you so much. My husband is now enrolled in school full-time. He's working full-time. He's becoming a nurse, and a lot of this is made possible because we are able to take advantage of this account money. It's just taken a huge burden off of my shoulders because after the public charter school, part of it was the distance, that we had to drive. But after that sort of failed, I did attempt homeschooling, so I had to cut back my work hours. So this has had a huge financial positive impact. So I'm just pleading with you to keep that alive, to keep those accounts alive. It's helped all of my children, really. Even my daughter who has graduated high school, she has seen the positive effects. And, it's going to make better citizens. I can see it already in my son, who has just made huge gains in reading and socializing, and he's made friends really for the first time. And I just don't want to have to remove him from this wonderful school that's working for him and his unique needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I would just ask if we could remind folks to state their name for the record. That would be helpful in drafting the hearing report.
Scrizzati Wing, sorry about that.
I have one more person, actually 2 more people would like to speak. And I have to apologize. I think the last name is Mahmoud. I can't figure out the first name. What is it?
Huh?
What is your first name?
Sorry. My name is Marwan Mahmood.
Okay.
I'm from New Hampton, and I go to Laconia Christian Academy. Up until September, I was going to public school, but I stopped because I didn't like the influence that students were having on my life and
on me. The only reason I am able to attend the school of my choice is because of the Education Freedom account. At LCA, I'm surrounded by friends and teachers who want the best for me. Another reason I came here is because I want to learn. I'm learning so much in my rhetoric class. I'm actually currently learning about public speaking. My life has changed so much because of the EFA. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
That was short and sweet. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. The next person is David. You have to help me with your last name. Looks like it starts with a B.
Lesson in civics, and I'm glad you took advantage of it.
David, what is your last name?
Blyler.
Laser.
Yeah, David Blyler. Good morning.
Okay.
Thank you for having us in this morning. I'll be as brief as possible. So I'm a New Hampshire native, born and raised. I'm a proud father of 3 kids, all of whom are actually with me here today, and the proud husband of a terrific educator. My wife is absolutely fantastic at her job. Anyway, when we were newly married and our daughter was 3, my wife was getting her master's degree in education at Plymouth State University, and part of her master's was to sit in on a classroom, and she went to my public school. I went to Newfound Regional when I was younger, and so she sat in with the 8th grade class, English class, because she was studying for humanities as her focus. And I remember when I was in 8th grade, I was excited because it was the first time we were able to choose our own book to read in the class, and I chose, being an 8th grade boy, I chose Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, as boys do. But my wife was underwhelmed because at the time at that school, some of the boys in the class were reading hunting magazines. And it was at that time, there were other things too, we can't remember, but it was at that time my wife and I decided that we were going to seek alternative education, whatever the cost would be. For our kids, and that's when she got a job teaching at Laconia Christian Academy, and she's attended there. Our daughter, who is 3 now, is now 14. She just had her 14th birthday, and so I'm in favor of EFAs because my wife and I don't make a big income. We opted to pay the price because our kids mattered that much to us, and the EFAs actually helped a lot because. What the portion that we did pay out of pocket is now helped covered by the Education Freedom accounts, and that really helps us in our day-to-day lives. Our property taxes too, we were new homeowners, and our property taxes have been tough in our town as well. I know the lion's share of those are to the local school system, so we opt to pay twice, and we're more than willing to do that. But it is difficult, and so I feel, my wife and I feel that the public school system has been deteriorating, and I'm in favor of the Education Freedom accounts because it gives a chance for to help. The overall goal, I would hope, as legislators is to improve outcomes for our kids, and to help ensure that the tax burden on the citizenry does not get so high that it's unbearable. And I think that these are steps and directions that can help improve outcomes for our kids, and also help relieve some heavy tax burden on local taxpayers. And I know it's a tough road. There's 2 very different educational models, and I don't presume to know all the answers, but just expressing my support or opposition to the proposed bill today.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now, I have a whole long list of people who are opposing the bill and do not want to speak. And I'm going to read off the names as much as I can. Gabriel Smith, Natalie Blaler, Rick Duba, Sarah Waterman, Emma Demaris, Tobin Smith, Carrie Butler, Randall Kelly, Andrea Watson, Jared, I don't know. This stuff would be, it looks like a Jed, but I'm not sure. And Lilia Demmel, and Roseanne Chester, and Emma Blake are all opposed to the bill, but do not want to speak. And thank you all for coming. Unless I hear anybody from the audience who have not had a chance to testify, you raise your hand and you can do it now. Otherwise, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 432. I don't see anyone. The public hearing is closed. Thank you very much. Yep. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
But if you want to call it a day.
I'll call it a day.
Just say it into your microphone.
Huh?
Nobody heard that online. I know. Just tell everybody at home that we're calling it a day.
Motion to adjourn, second.
Motion to adjourn. Aye.